Good evening, and welcome to a discussion of the proposed Dundas Bus Rapid Transit Project. My name is Joseph Thornley. I'm the CEO of 76 Engage, Metrolinx's public engagement partner for virtual consultation. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event, and as such, I'll work to keep the event on time, pose the questions that you have submitted, and ensure your questions are answered as completely as possible. I want to thank everyone who's attending tonight for your interest in joining us here for this evening. If you require closed captioning, we have it available for you. And if you'd like to turn it on, just scroll down to the bottom of the video and click on the CC that is at the bottom of the video screen. Now, as we begin tonight, Metrolinx acknowledges that it operates on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. In fact, the Dundas Bus Rapid Transit Project is proposed on lands covered by Treaty 3, 1792, the Head of the Lake Purchase, 1806, and the Brant Tract, 1795, Treaty 22 and 23, 1820, and Treaty 13, 1805, with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the Fort Albany-Nanfan Treaty of 1701 with the Haudenosaunee. Metrolinx is committed to building meaningful relationships with Indigenous people and to working towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of the land. Now, tonight we will be discussing, as I said, the proposed Dundas Bus Rapid Transit Project. The purpose of the Dundas BRT is to evaluate the proposed transit corridor along a 48-kilometer stretch of Dundas Street from Highway 6 in the city of Hamilton through to the Kipling Transit Hub in the city of Toronto, linking Etobicoke and Mississauga city centers. Tonight's session is part of the second round of public engagement for this project. It will not be the last, and at the end, we'll talk to you about how you can participate further. Tonight's session is scheduled to last 1 hour. There'll be a presentation at the beginning by the team, and then questions. Now, as you'll see on the screen below the video, there is a place where you can submit questions and also upvote and downvote questions. So I'd encourage you to take a second and go and see whether or not there are questions that have been submitted that you'd really like answered, and upvote them, and we'll make sure that they rise earlier in the meeting. And if you don't see your interest or your concern has been addressed in any of the questions, please feel free to submit a new question. Even if we don't get to it tonight, Metrolinx will make an effort to respond to it after the meeting. Again, if you've just joined us, closed captioning is available. Just scroll down to the bottom of your video screen and you can click on the CC to open closed captioning. So I'd like to introduce our panel for this evening. First, we have Maria Doyle. She is the Manager of Transportation Policy at Metrolinx. With her is Darcy Wiltshire, the Environmental Project Manager, Greg Medellin, Director, Community Engagement, and also Matthew Williams, the Project Leader from the City of Mississauga. Finally, we have Kevin Phillips, who is the Project Manager from ACOM. In addition to our team of panelists, we also have a number of staff on hand who can help answer the questions later on. So you may hear from some other people and we'll introduce them at that time. Before we go into the presentation, I'd like to ask Kristen Olson of the Metrolinx planning team to provide us with some additional context on the project.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Metrolinx's role is to work with municipalities and communities to coordinate and advance these cross-regional transit connections. And the Dundas BRT is really one of those really important cross-regional connections. It was identified in the 2041 Regional Transportation Plan. It connects a lot of those key centers that Joseph had mentioned earlier. So I just want to say that the project team is really excited and very keen to hear your thoughts, to work with this community and stakeholders, and to really make sure that this project is a success. Thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. So let's get into the presentation itself. And I believe, Kevin, you are going to kick that off for us.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Joseph, and for the introduction. Today's presentation is a tailored version of the materials that you can see on our project website. And this virtual engagement began on Thursday, September 2nd, and these materials are available for public comment and review and feedback until Thursday, September 23rd. And we're really looking for feedback on that material. So let's get into it. What is bus rapid transit? What is BRT? And you're going to hear BRT a fair number of times today. Typically, a BRT features dedicated bus lanes in an exclusive dedicated right-of-way just for buses. This results in higher average bus travel speeds in the corridor for the buses, and this allows for shorter travel times for the bus and a more reliable transit experience for the passengers on the bus. The BRT corridor could also feature smart traffic signal technology, and that helps to improve the bus flows as well. And finally, BRT will often feature additional infrastructure and bus stop enhancements to improve the operational efficiency and enhance the customer experience. Metrolinx, as you've already heard, they've got a really progressive transit plan for the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, and it's articulated in that 2041 Regional Transportation Plan that Kristen just mentioned. But there's also been a number of other additional transit and transportation planning studies, such as the City of Mississauga's Dundas Connects Corridor Master Plan of 2018, and that confirmed the need for improved bus transit service in the area. Now, the communities in the area, they're maturing and they're experiencing significant population and employment growth along the corridor. And the purpose of this project, as you already heard from Joseph, is to evaluate the corridor for various BRT improvements in the area. This would provide for that better, more efficient transit experience that I mentioned. And we've identified that there would be an average travel time savings for bus riders of about up to 14 minutes. Now, the BRT would also improve connections between the communities along the 48-kilometer segment. It aligns with investing in transit-oriented communities, and it'll help achieve climate change and sustainability goals. Next slide, please. The study has co-proponents in that Metrolinx and the City of Mississauga are both proponents for the study. And the study area is divided into quite a number of segments, generally defined by municipal geography, but also by the extent of planning work that's already been put in place to support transit improvements in the area. The first segment is the City of Toronto at the east limits of the study area, and the next is Mississauga. But the Mississauga segment is being broken into two sections. First, there's the Mississauga East segment extending from Confederation Parkway in Cooksville easterly all the way to Etobicoke Creek, the City of Toronto border. And the reason for that is because the city has submitted an application for federal infrastructure, federal government funding through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and you'll hear ISIP a couple times, ISIP funding, in order to support the near-term advanced implementation of the Mississauga East segment. The second Mississauga segment is Mississauga West, and that's on a slightly longer implementation timeline. And the fourth and final segment for our study area is the combined Halton and Hamilton area, which has gone through a number of its own planning studies and planning process already. So let's look at the next slide about project timelines. Okay. The image here summarizes the general project process and the general timelines for public engagement. We're at the second public round, which is that black bubble to the bottom left of the screen. And a key element of this schedule is that advanced work that I mentioned a few minutes ago associated with the Mississauga East segment and that ICEP funding application. Now, in order to achieve this aggressive timing, our project team is leveraging that prior Mississauga Dundas Connects Corridor Master Plan and the results and the planning approvals that ensued from that in order to advance our preliminary design and all the environmental studies that we'll need for the Mississauga East segment. For this segment, we do anticipate in the late fall that we will again have a third round of public engagement and public consultation. But this time we'll present the preliminary design of the alternative of the corridor through Mississauga East. And with that, we'll document any identified environmental impacts as well as any potential mitigation strategies for that. Now, the public engagement at that time will also coincide with what's called the Transit Project Assessment Process, the TPAP. That's an environmental assessment process, and it has a formal initiation and public review associated with that. And it's expected that that public review process for the Mississauga East TPAP will be completed in this upcoming winter, so winter 2021-22. For the Toronto and the Mississauga West segments, the alternatives design process and the assessment of that will actually occur through the winter of early 2022, so early next year. And at that point, we'll begin presenting a preferred design, any ensuing impacts and mitigation for those impacts for the public review as part of a TPAP process in the middle of next year, so summer 2022. Overall, our study is anticipated to complete by late 2022. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we mentioned, we're in public engagement number 2. We hosted the first virtual engagement session in April of this year, and the purpose of that engagement was to introduce the project and solicit any kind of feedback about factors that people consider important in the study area. The feedback demonstrated general project support for improved transit services in the area, but there's also a number of common themes of comments that arose in that feedback. And the first one was that some areas of the corridor already are 6 lanes or they're planned for 6 lanes. There's planning approvals for that. And the feedback suggested that instead of widening the corridor beyond 6 lanes to 8 lanes, instead use that space to provide for the BRT corridor. Another comment was the need for dedicated, physically separated bicycle facilities in the area because many areas are lacking that. A third comment was integrating and connecting with other transit projects in the area, such as the Huron-Ontario LRT. And a fourth comment was to be sensitive and reflective of the natural heritage areas throughout the corridor. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in the Toronto and both the Mississauga East and West segment, we are undertaking a number of studies which are identified on this slide. And the purpose of that is to summarize existing conditions and note the impacts and any potential mitigation strategies that we'll employ. These various reports are noted here, and additional information related to these studies is available on the public project website, the Metrolinx Engage website, and we encourage people to go visit those elements and provide any public feedback on their key findings. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. We will be developing a 10% and then a 30% preliminary design for the corridor. Now, this establishes the overall road plan. It identifies the road elements, any infrastructure facility design elements. It establishes property impact and any utility relocations that are required. Now, although that we're currently at a 10% design level for the Mississauga East segment, we will be quickly advancing to 30% preliminary design, as I mentioned, per the ICEP application. And with the aim for that is to have early construction beginning in approximately 2 years for Mississauga East. The planning and design for the Mississauga segments, including the pinch points, is the most advanced part of our project, and we're going to document that or go through that in the following slides. But I want to note pinch points. Pinch points in the corridor have been identified, and these pinch points are constrained areas that have a varying degree of issues or constraints in them, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But what we've got to do in the pinch point areas is to consider different design approaches, such as reduced number of lanes or reductions in the amenity boulevard space on the side of the road. Pinch points have been identified in the Mississauga segment in both the Cooksville area and in the Arundel Valley area. So let's go to the next slide and we'll look at the general corridor design outside of the two pinch points. The 10% preliminary design is being developed and it's near completion. This design reflects the prior Dundas Connects master plan recommendations from a couple of years ago, which identified the planning for dedicated BRT lanes, so 2 lanes in the middle of the road, plus 2 general purpose traffic lanes on either side in the eastbound and westbound direction. It identified enhanced bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and it also proposed enhanced pedestrian realm and amenity space wherever possible in the boulevards. But in order to achieve these desired improvements for the corridor, Dundas Street would need to be widened to up to 42 meters wide. Now, in order to achieve this would require property acquisition, and it would have potential impacts to adjacent site landscaping, driveways, parking, and possibly buildings. But it is important to note as well for this study that we're also coordinating the Dundas BRT design with the City of Mississauga's 2 ongoing special policy area studies regarding flooding and drainage conditions in the area of Etobicoke Creek and Little Etobicoke Creek. So let's go to the next slide and we talk about the design. Okay. So consistent with the recommendations from that prior Dundas Connects corridor master plan, we've generated 2 general cross-section examples of what the corridor layout would look like in the corridor. We've got curbside bus operation and a dedicated median BRT guideway in the middle of the road. It is important to note, though, that these 2 concepts are more than just about BRT transit. It's about creating a corridor that is balanced and accommodates all modes. It's multimodal and accommodates especially those sustainable travel modes. But in order to achieve that balanced, sustainable corridor, as I mentioned, the road needs to be reconstructed and widened in many locations with some property acquisition. At this point, we're encouraging comments and feedback on people's thoughts on these corridor concepts that you see on screen. I would really like to get that kind of feedback. The right image shows bus stop platforms and that median guideway. It's fully separated from traffic, the transit is, and there would be medians along the middle of the road that would prohibit left turn traffic or crossover traffic, except at major intersections. This cross-section would generally be applicable to Dundas in Mississauga, east of the Credit Woodlands, except through the Cooksville pinch point, which we'll talk about in a minute. The left image on the screen shows a general 4 to 5 lane cross-section corridor plus dedicated curbside bus lanes. And this cross-section would be applicable to Dundas west of Mississauga Road, but again in Mississauga. Let's go to the next slide and we can talk to geometry. Okay, this graphic illustrates the proposed changes to the Dundas Street width, or right-of-way in a technical term. The charcoal bar at the top illustrates the city's planned width for Dundas Street. And as you can see, it varies from 36 to 42 meters wide, and that's per the city's official plan. However, the black bar just below that illustrates the approximate existing width of Dundas Street. And from Arundel Valley and through to the east, road widenings would be required in order to achieve that BRT balanced corridor vision. There are notable right-of-way width deficiencies, road width deficiencies in the 2 pinch point areas in the middle of the screen that you can see. And there's a minor road width deficiency east of Cooksville as well. Since the existing road width is less than that planned up to 42 meter wide corridor, additional property, as I've mentioned, would be required in these areas to accommodate that full widened corridor vision. But we are exploring opportunities to mitigate the potential property impact in these areas where possible. And we're doing this through optimization of the corridor plan. So instead of widening on both sides of the street, maybe you do it on the north side only or on the south side only. So that's one way. Another way is to apply minimum road design standards. And a final consideration for us is to reduce the boulevard space where it could possibly be achieved later in the future through redevelopment of the adjacent lands and dedicating some of the roads, some additional land to the road space, so then you could then do a wider boulevard. Optimization of the design is also being context sensitive to the areas, and we're definitely considering minimizing the number and the scale of the impacts of properties in the area. We want to minimize impacts to heritage properties and also to the environment in areas. And we're also doing what we can to avoid potentially contaminated lands and also minimizing utility relocations as well. So let's look at the next slide, and we'll speak to the pinch points. So as I mentioned earlier, 2 pinch points have been identified in Mississauga. The first one being Cooksville, that old Highway 10 and 5 intersection, and the second one is the Arundel Valley lands around Arundel Park. We've generated alternative plans for each of these pinch points to address those local challenges and constraints in the area, and they've been subject to a multi-factor analysis in a review by our team, and we'll talk about that on our next slide, please. Okay. The pinch point evaluation considers a variety of technical factors. It pertains to the natural environment, cultural heritage, and the built environment in the area. And a number of factors associated with that are summarized on this slide. And let's go to the next slide, and we'll speak specifically to the Cooksville pinch point. Great. The Cookville area is a constrained environment through the village area, and we've defined that as from Confederation Parkway easterly to Jaguar Valley Drive. And key considerations in Cooksville, in the Cooksville pinch point, are that there's an existing very narrow road width through the area. It's as low as 23 meters. Now, in order to achieve that 42-meter planned road width that I mentioned, property acquisition would be required in order to achieve the dedicated BRT lanes, 4 traffic lanes for general purpose traffic, the cycle tracks for bikes, and wider sidewalks and better amenity space on the boulevard. Another impact or concern would be that there's a number of buildings that are located close to the property line, or in fact on the property line. There's a significant amount of development intensification in the area. There's a new Hurontario LRT and that planned track and stop right at the intersection. There's a number of cultural heritage properties and resources in the area. And to a certain degree, each alternative has a varying impact on that community character of the Cooksville Village. So let's go to the next slide and we'll look at some alternatives. Okay, so the project team developed and analyzed a total of 6 alternative concepts for the corridor through Cooksville, and we reviewed each for drawbacks and benefits. These 3 alternatives that you see on screen, numbers 1, 3, and 4, were identified as reasonable alternatives and shortlisted for further study. And based on that additional review that we did, which we'll walk through, number 1 was identified as the best performing alternative in our current work. So alternative 1, as you can see, is the full median BRT. It's widened about the center line with 2 traffic lanes in each direction for general purpose traffic, and it's got cycle tracks and the amenity space on the boulevards. This is actually the alternative that was recommended in that prior Dundas Connect study that I'd mentioned earlier. Alternative 3 in the middle, it's similar to alternative 1, but it actually prohibits and precludes any left turns at Hurontario. So there'd be no turns at the intersection there. And number 4 is reconstruction of Dundas Street through Cooksville to provide for cycle tracks and better amenity space on the boulevards with wider sidewalks, that sort of thing. But buses would operate in mixed traffic and be subject to delays associated with just regular traffic congestion. So we'll walk through the next couple of slides and the 6 alternatives at the pinch point. So let's go to the next slide. All right, these are the first 3 alternatives, 1, 2, and 3. As I mentioned earlier, alternative 1 with that widened corridor for the BRT lanes is the best performing alternative. And that's because it provides for the enhanced BRT transit service. It's reliable for the transit passenger to know when the bus is going to come, and it's got faster travel speeds for the buses through the area. Alternative number 2 is very similar to number 1, but instead of having 4 traffic lanes, it only has 1 traffic lane per direction. So it's cutting the general traffic capacity in half. Now, this has significant impacts to traffic through the area, and it was therefore not shortlisted for further study due to those traffic impacts in the area. Alternative number 3, as I mentioned a moment ago, is very similar to alternative 1, but by not providing the left turns or allowing for left turns at Huron, Ontario, this also resulted in negative traffic impacts in the Cooksville community area as well. Let's go to the next slide and we'll look at the last 3 alternatives. Okay, all right. Alternative 4 is with buses operating in mixed traffic, as I mentioned a moment ago. The issue with this condition is that it results in poor BRT transit service for the area because you don't get the continuity of the service, and the buses would be subject to delays of traffic through Cooksville. Alternative number 5. It's similar to number 1 again, but instead of spreading the widening on the north and the south side, alternative 5 is doing all the widening towards the south, along the south limits of Dundas. But this has significant impacts, redesign and reconstruction impacts for that forthcoming Huron, Ontario LRT, and it was not shortlisted because of those notable impacts. And finally, we've got alternative 6, which is simply burying the Dundas BRT underground through the Cooksville area. This alternative, unfortunately, though, has significant construction impacts and costs associated with it, and it was also not carried forward as a reasonable alternative. So let's go to the next slide, which summarizes the shortlisted alternatives and benefits. As I noted earlier, alternative 1 with that dedicated BRT is the best performing alternative in our assessment. It's best for mobility and traffic considerations since it provides for that dedicated BRT and has the least impacts to just general purpose auto traffic. In terms of engineering and infrastructure, it provides for that full balanced multimodal corridor for all users, and it's all at moderate construction costs. It has similar property impacts to the other shortlisted alternatives here, but we do acknowledge that there are some cultural heritage impacts associated with alternative number 1. So let's go to the next slide and you can see it. All right. Okay, so despite alternative 1 having some minor natural and a number of cultural heritage impacts through Cooksville, and there's potential impacts to existing and future land uses in the Cooksville area as well, alternative 1 with that dedicated BRT lanes, it does improve the travel times for buses through the corridor. It ensures that BRT vehicles maintain schedules and they're consistent and predictable, and it provides for a higher service reliability and better experience for the passenger. The rendering that you see at the right side of the screen here, it illustrates a typical concept layout of the median guideway with a bus stop at an intersection. With that, we encourage the community to review and comment on the alternatives and the evaluation information that we presented here, but there's much more on the project website as well. And we encourage you to review that and provide any feedback to our team on that because it'll be valuable as we move forward into our preliminary design in our next project stages. Let's move to the next slide and we'll talk about Arundel. Okay. We've also identified a pinch point in the Arundel Valley area, as I mentioned, and this is defined as from Mississauga Road through to the Credit Woodlands on the east side of the valley. Key considerations in Arundel Valley and this pinch point are, again, property acquisition would be required in order to achieve the planned city Mississauga road width of 36 meters. And we would need to do that in order to accommodate all those infrastructure elements that I've mentioned before, the BRT and 4 general purpose traffic lanes and bike lanes and better boulevard space. Another issue in the area is that there's a number of buildings that are located close to the property, and many of these buildings are actually cultural heritage resources, and there's also cultural heritage landscapes in the area as well. And finally, there's a significant natural heritage feature in the area as well through the Arundel Valley and the park. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll look at some alternative concepts for that. You can see here we've done up two concepts for Arundel Valley. Alternative one on the left has a reversible BRT lane in the middle of the road. So what that is it would be used, for instance, in the morning for eastbound buses would be in the guideway, but westbound buses would be just in mixed traffic going westbound. And then later in the day, the operation would flip. So say for the evening rush hour, buses would be in the westbound direction in the guideway, but eastbound buses would be in mixed traffic going eastbound. This was the recommended alternative in the prior Dundas Connect study that I mentioned, and the recommendation was premised basically on reducing the impacts in the valley lands. However, we're revisiting that conclusion to consider the benefits of providing for the dual BRT lanes through the Arundel Valley lands. And the reason for that is to quantify the benefit associated with the better service of having a two-lane guideway. And that's the alternative that you see on the right side of the screen, alternative 2. Again, we're seeking community input and any comments on these two concepts, so please feel free to provide feedback on that through our website or ask questions. The next slide, we can look at corridor planning and bus stops, the BRT stops. The form, the scale, and the amenities at each of the BRT stops will consider the anticipated ridership in the area at the stop, as well as existing infrastructure in the area. And potential amenities that could be included to promote the ridership and enhance the customer experience include a number of safety and accessibility features, so ramps, tactile surfaces, railings, convenience features for the customers such as next bus information, fare collection, weather protection, maps and seating areas, and finally art and heritage features that could reflect the area community characteristics in that area. And the two concepts that you see on the right side of the screen, they illustrate the concept BRT stops integrated into the street platform. The upper image that depicts a median BRT stop adjacent to the BRT guideway in the middle of the road, and the bottom illustrates a conceptual curbside stop with beside the bus lanes along the curbside of Dundas Street. So let's go to the next one. Okay, BRT stops are typically spaced at a greater distance than you would get with conventional bus stops. With the BRT, they tend to be about 500 to 1,000 meters between stops. This helps maintain a higher average bus travel speeds for the transit, and it ensures a little bit better service reliability because there's less stopping associated with more frequent stops, say, for example. Our project team has identified a number of BRT stop locations based on balancing access to the corridor versus having that travel time, that better travel time for the transit in the actual corridor. And these stop locations were based on a number of factors that you can see here. First, the number of stops and the stop locations that were identified in the Dundas Connects master plan study. It considered intersecting transit infrastructure and bus routes that form the basis of a feeder network in the area, as well as the Huron-Ontario LRT that would be coming in the future. We considered the distance between stops, of course, as well, and we looked at land use and major trip generators in the area. In total, for Mississauga East, 8 bus stops, BRT stops have been identified, as you can see here. And again, we would like to welcome any kind of feedback or public insights or comments on these proposed locations and the bus stop amenities that we talked about on the last slide. So let's move to the next slide and we can look at Hamilton and Halton and what's happening there. So in the Hamilton and Halton area, a number of environmental assessments have already been conducted to support road widening projects in the area. In Halton region, curb lanes have been identified to provide for and accommodate potential high occupancy vehicle lanes, HOV lanes, which could be converted to dedicated BRT or bus only lanes. And our study will be evaluating converting the future HOV lanes to dedicated curbside BRT lanes as part of our a variety of transit service concepts and a study that we're doing for that. This will also engage the local transit service providers through Hamilton and Halton, and we will present that at a future round of public engagement in the future. In addition to considering the conversion of the HOV lanes to dedicated bus or BRT lanes, we're also considering improvement strategies for the corridor, such as queue jump lanes to get a bus quicker through an intersection, as well as smart traffic signals to prioritize bus movements through red light, green light. The team will continue to review these transit improvements and these options, and also determine stop locations in Halton and Hamilton in the future, and we'll present that at a future engagement as well. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, the next round of public engagement is planned for late 2021, when the Mississauga TPAP that I mentioned is scheduled to commence. For this, the project team will continue to complete environmental studies and proceed with the design of the BRT corridor in the area. And again, feedback received from this public round of engagement will also be used by the team to influence refinements to the corridor design, as well as the pinch point design as well. We'll also continue to advance all 4 segments of the project, from Toronto through to Hamilton and Waterdown, as you can see on this slide. For the Toronto and Mississauga West segment, we will continue to develop and assess the pinch point alternatives to determine the technically preferred design. We will continue with the environmental studies to identify impacts and mitigation strategies, and we'll also host a public engagement in the winter of 2022 to present design alternatives and the evaluation. For Hamilton and Halton, we will begin to identify BRT stops and those transit priority measures I mentioned a moment ago, and host a public engagement targeted to that geographic region in mid-2022. And that's it for me. And with that, thank you for listening. And now I'll send it back to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Kevin. That was a lot of information. And indeed, I noticed that people were submitting questions during the course of your presentation. So I'm going to mix it up a bit and ask questions that were most voted for, but also because people were asking questions based on the new information in your presentation. Also go to some of those, because many people may not have discovered them and had a chance to vote for them. So first question, you showed cycling, provisions for cycling and pedestrians. There's a question about cycling infrastructure. Despite the pinch points and other planning irregularities in the right of way, along with different municipal considerations, is there an absolute commitment to providing cycling facilities the entire length of the corridor, at least through Mississauga?
I can take that one, Joseph, and Matthew may want to add to that to speak to Mississauga. But there definitely is a commitment to the provision of cycling facilities. It was enshrined in the Dundas Connects Corridor Master Plan as one of the key elements of that study. As I mentioned several times, this is more than just transit. We want a balanced multimodal corridor that accommodates all users, and as I said, sustainable modes, and cycling certainly is one of them. So there definitely is consideration for that, and we're looking at cycle tracks as well as multi-use paths or multi-use trails as well. Matthew, did you want to comment on that?
I just wanted to say the city of Mississauga has a cycling master plan, and it's a very important component of our overall strategy. And Dundas is certainly identified, as are a lot of other corridors like Huron, Ontario, where we're building a cycle track facility as well. So it's certainly a commitment under that documentation.
Okay, thank you for that. There's another question here that's probably relevant for you, Matthew, and it's, do Metrolinx and Mississauga plan to evolve the design of the BRT? Do you plan to evolve it beyond the recommendations of Dundas Connects? Would you be considering additional stations, for example, Arundel Park, or a different design for the segment west of the Credit Woodlands. So this person's asking about how much room there is for a change at this stage.
Well, the Dundas Connects process had a lot of public input, and the plan evolved to that stage. And now we're in the next process where we've done a lot more detail on the design. And this type of public engagement is really to get public input. If you think a stop should be in a different location, if you think there should be a change in the design, or you'd like to see a component of that design reflected, we welcome your comments on those pieces.
Okay, and sorry, Kevin, did I cut you off?
Oh, I was acknowledging Matthew's response. The only thing if I shake my head, but the only thing I would add to that, because the question was specific to Mississauga West as well, is that as you saw in the presentation, we have only identified for the Mississauga East segment, but in the ensuing stages of the project, we will be identifying stop locations and. In Dundas Connects, they had identified concept locations. We will review that just like we did for Mississauga East, and it will be presented at our next or at a future engagement round.
Okay, thank you. Another question along similar lines: is Toronto on the same pace and page as Mississauga? In Toronto, is because the design of the BRT between Subway Crescent or Auckland Road and Etobicoke Creek will be impacted by whatever Toronto plans to do and how quickly they plan to do it. Are you able to address that?
How about I take that one as a start? Again, as part of the Dundas Connects study that was done by the City of Mississauga, they sought and got planning approvals for the BRT guideway in Mississauga proper. As part of that study a couple of years ago, they did look at and consult with the City of Toronto for potential alternatives for connecting through to Kipling. But that study, or that element of the study, did not secure or get planning approvals, environmental assessment approvals. What this study that we're doing now as part of Dundas BRT with Metrolinx is, and I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, is there is the Toronto segment A, the east segment of this, and we will be working with the City of Toronto, identifying potential concepts to bring the guideway or some sort of transit infrastructure facility all the way to Subway Crescent. And the City of Toronto is going to be engaged on that process. And again, I think the first part of your question was about the timing and is it as advanced. It's certainly not on the same pace as the Mississauga East segment that we talked about a lot today. And Mississauga East has that advanced ICEP funding and TPAP process. But Toronto will be a bit behind that, and we will engage with the public as well as the City of Toronto in the coming months next year.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last big picture question, because this did come in during the presentation, and this is something that comes up often with regard to projects, and that is whether it's going to happen. Has the decision to do this project been finalized, or is there still a possibility that it might not happen, either from lack of support from people, from citizens, or taxpayers?
So I'll start this, but I think I'm going to look at Matthew to sort of help me on it as well when he talks about Mississauga proper. But as far as a project is concerned, it goes through several stages before it becomes shovels in the ground. So at this point, the project is still in the early design phases. So until we get past those stages, we don't know what it's going to look like. I think that when we talk about it in terms of funding, we can talk very specifically about the City of Mississauga portion that we're advancing right now. And I don't know, if Matthew, if you want to add any comments regarding that.
Sure. So there's no committed funding at this moment, but the city does have an application to the federal government for funding. But the crux of the issue is this whole project is predicated on growth occurring, and growth continues to occur in Mississauga. And that growth is linked to the need to move people. And that's why, we do these type of exercises. And as long as people keep on coming and that growth occurs, we'll have to find a way to move those people. So it's an important part of our vision on how to move that growth.
Okay, thank you for those answers. I wanted to put them up front because those are the kinds of things that come in, especially many of us don't have the familiarity with the project itself that you do and are still maybe a step back and wondering about the overall environment. So in your presentation, you talked about pinch points, Kevin. Is it fair game to talk about Waterdown downtown? Where one of our questioners is saying that the downtown stretch of Waterdown is extremely tight and always backed up with cars and construction vehicles. And how will buses negotiate this area? So in terms of your design in that area.
I can take that. It definitely is recognized that that's a constrained area through the Waterdown community. That all said, we've not identified it as a pinch point per se, because we're not actually contemplating doing significant infrastructure improvements through Waterdown, a widening. Because if we were to do that, that would certainly have a lot of impacts to the vibrancy of the Waterdown village. And we certainly don't want to do that. But in terms of the traffic that there's there now and trying to get betterment for moving buses through the corridor, one of the elements that we definitely would be considering would be those transit signal priority measures, which is coordinating buses with their approaches to traffic signals so that you can accelerate them through, advance them through the intersection a little bit quicker. Now, there's also another element to that question too, is, well, what about other improvements in the area? And I would point out that the city of Hamilton, and it's available on the Hamilton website, they've gone through a planning process as well, and it's articulated in the Aldershot Waterdown Transportation Master Plan. If you just Google Waterdown Master Plan, Transportation Master Plan, it identifies a number of improvements in the broader Waterdown community area. And one of those notable improvements is the creation of, it's not the right word, but a ring road type system, and the creation of North Waterdown Drive, I believe it is. And the city will be they've done the planning for this road network improvement, and they are in the next several years going to be staging the creation of that improvement around Waterdown.
Okay, thank you. While we're talking about Waterdown and Flamborough, a questioner says that she sees the end of the BRT is at the corner of Highway 5 and 6. Is there a plan for the route to end at Course Lab or in the Hamilton Technology Center? And how will this connect with existing bus routes and the Hamilton HSR? Could you talk a bit about that, please?
That's a great question, and formally, the project study area does end at the west limit in Highway 6, but buses move beyond the corridor. And one element of the study is doing a transit service routing study, and we are looking at various transit routing options and service options for the whole corridor, and how they would engage or link with the various transit service providers in the area. And that could be, or whether it's GO or HSR, Burlington Transit, there's a number of them through the whole corridor. But through this transit service routing study, we'll be identifying a variety of alternative service concepts and identifying a preferred transit service concept. But that would also consider off-corridor connections to whether it be GO stations or to McMaster University or Hamilton Downtown or other locations.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about the operation, and I'm not sure whether you've gotten to that point, but the questioner is asking yet whether the operation of the BRT has been considered and how it will affect things like the relationship to feeder services. Will there be a special fare program to reduce double or even triple fares? Will the design allow for feeder buses to access the BRT at key intersections? Have you gotten into that point of discussion or consideration? And if you have, can you talk a bit about that, please?
Yeah, I can handle that one, Joseph. So I think Kevin touched on a little bit, but right now we haven't determined who the operator of the BRT will be. And as part of that routing and service strategy that we're working on, that's where all of that information will come out. So that's currently underway and we're working towards it. But also over and above that, the question is asking about the fare system. So currently, just as a flag, we do have a co-fare system between Go Transit and some of the 905 operators in the region. But over and above that, we are currently working with Ministry of Transportation and our municipal partners to explore some of the opportunities to better integrate transit fares across the region and make it easier and more convenient to take transit. And this will actually feed into some of the information regarding the routing and service strategies. So, you know, the idea is to sort of overlay a lot of this information together, and hopefully at the end of the day, we'll have a comprehensive package for the operations and service for this area.
Okay. And so if I was to be wanting to participate in the public engagement and to know when that info would come out, when should I start to look for information that I could actually consider, understand?
If we're talking about the routing and service strategy, I'd look at Kevin about what the timelines are for that one. At this point, the fare is still an internal project, but it's with Ministry of Transportation and our municipal partners. So I don't know what the timing is because it's a separate project that's not part of Dundas BRT directly.
Okay. And Kevin?
Yeah, that would be starting to galvanize and be presented in late 2021 at our third public round of engagement.
Okay, thank you for that. Some of the people who have participated in submitting questions are clearly living close to the BRT. And there is the question of properties. Will you have to expropriate any properties for widening or other work? And or will parts of backyards be repossessed at Credit Woodlands? Two questions have come in, but generally speaking, what is the situation for people who own properties? Is there going to be some incursion?
Joseph, I can take that. It's Greg Medlin, Director of Community Engagement from Metrolinx, and it's a really important question, and I'm glad that it's been flagged. A couple of things in this regard. We only acquire properties or will acquire properties that are necessary for the projects, and we're going to be taking every effort to minimize impacts on land that is required. And we're going to be doing that through careful planning and design work. And as we refine plans, and we saw Kevin's timeline earlier, that these are still early days. As we refine plans and designs for the project, we're going to get a clearer picture of the properties that would be needed for a project to become a reality. And once we determine a need for these properties, we would obviously reach out directly to owners to discuss next steps. And as you can imagine, we're committed to working closely with property owners to reach mutually beneficial agreements for anything relating to land that would be required to deliver a project of this scope. With specific to the second part of the question, these would be early days to comment on that. But again, I refer back to my earlier comment that with careful planning and design work, our intention is to really minimize the impacts to land. Okay. And if I could, Joseph, just to take this opportunity, I think important for those listening and for those who have participated in this process, that for this process to be successful, there's an important link for Metrolinx in the community as it relates to community engagement. And for those who don't know, we do have an actual office at Here Ontario and Dundas. It's a storefront right on Here Ontario, where people from the community are always welcome to contact us, approach us to engage in conversations about this project.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to ask you about that. So if I wanted to get information, I could come to the neighborhood office, I assume. If I wanted to get information, is there another place I could go to get information if I wasn't able to get to the office?
Yeah, of course, like you said, the office is a great portal. We've got many social channels that you can reach out and connect with our team. We're a robust team. There's a number of us, and also through Metrolinx Engage. There's a number of ways that you can connect with us, and we'll be able to report back in the way that we're approached.
Okay, so the contact us button that's right here on the website, if I was to click that and send you a message, you'd respond to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. There's a question about Kipling and the BRT and stop in Hamilton. Will there be connection with the Hamilton HSR? Now, I'm not sure that this may be a bit more detailed. You may have already covered this part of it. But the questioner is saying departing from Kipling and being able to connect to the Hamilton transit system would be so convenient. This would reduce commute time immensely. Currently going from the Kipling area to downtown Toronto to get to Hamilton bound bus or train is nearly a 2-hour commute just to get to downtown Hamilton. So is there the potential for a better connection with Hamilton through this?
So I think you've answered the question there, Joseph. That's the whole intent behind the Dundas BRT project.
Yes.
Is to be able to connect from Kipling Station straight across into Hamilton. Now, right now, I think, Kevin, our terminus is Highway 6. Is that right, Kevin? Just make sure I've got that right.
Yes.
But I mean, the idea is it should be connecting to the HSR system in Hamilton. How that looks in the future, again, is part of that bigger routing and service strategy that we're working on. But that's absolutely why we're doing this project, to help increase the connectivity of transit in the region.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a question about design and traffic and the buses. And the questioner is asking, assuming the buses would have to obey signal lights, and is that a fair assumption? How is it that they would be that much faster in a dedicated lane than buses in normal traffic? And given the impact of losing 2 lanes, and the questioner is looking at Dundas, why not let the buses mix with the traffic, which would save a lot of money on creating new infrastructure? Also, the questioner is asking an alternative, so I'll put it out here because you can then address the whole thing. If speed is a priority, have you considered an elevated structure that would help for speed? So can you address those design considerations, please?
Sure. This is Kevin again. I'll try and take this one on. 3 questions I think I got out of that. So one is about the co-relationship between the bus and traffic signals. And there would actually, of course, the buses would have to obey the traffic signals. What often happens with a dedicated BRT is that there's actually separate bus signals for the guideway. And so they would get a green signal indication allowing them to advance before just general traffic. And this provides for that higher travel speeds for the transit operations that I mentioned earlier. So there's definitely good coordination between the bus movements and traffic signals to provide for great efficiency in operations of the buses. There's a second question there about the number of lanes and taking away lanes and impact, and is it necessary? And I guess what I would say to that first is that this isn't old Highway 5. This isn't Dundas for the 70s, and we're not planning like we used to in the 80s, where if we needed more capacity, we would just widen to 6 lanes and then to 8 lanes, and you get these big auto-oriented corridors that aren't really sustainable. Times have changed, and we've now got climate change and sustainability goals that are built into our projects. And I guess the key message out of that is that we don't want to widen our way out. That's not a solution, like just keep on widening. What you've got to do is find a better way to move more people with what you've got in your footprint. And that's the impetus behind converting lanes to bus lanes. That way, instead of getting one single occupant vehicle going by with one person occupant in it, you move a bus with 40 or 70 people. So you're getting more bang for your buck with your existing footprint. So that's the capacity question. And the third question was just about, did we consider an elevated structure, or is an elevated structure something that should be considered? And actually, going back to the Dundas Connect study, they looked at a variety of technologies to deliver transit, whether it be a subway or a SkyTrain like you've got on the West Coast, or LRTs or BRT. And they reviewed the provision of these different types of technologies or services based on ridership pickup and the attraction that you would get for more transit riders on the corridor versus the actual cost and the impacts associated with these various alternatives. And I'll put subways into the same bucket as the SkyTrain type example. Is it was determined at that time, at that stage of the study, that the ridership pickup, the ability to attract more riders to the corridor, didn't warrant that extra burden of cost associated with an elevated facility and the structure. If you consider an elevated structure, it's basically a really long bridge, and that costs significantly more. And likewise, the subway does too. So a SkyTrain was ruled out as not a viable technology through Dundas Connects.
Okay, thanks. Now, I'm going to stick with that a bit because there's a questioner who's asked a fairly long question with a number of statements, and it's there, and I know that Metrolinx will be able to respond in writing later. But going to the issue of Dundas, you talked about how to speed things through with a number of passengers on the bus. This person is basically making the case that 50 years ago, Dundas Street from Etobicoke to Cawthra was 2 lanes each way. It was expanded to 3 lanes to accommodate population. And now there's going to be, according to his read, an elimination of some lanes, and that it really relies on moving people onto the bus and out of cars. So if he is worried about whether or not there is data to support that this will actually help, are there studies where you've made a link between traffic projections before and after, with and without, that justify your confidence that this will actually alleviate congestion and help with the transit speed?
I think I answered part of that question already in terms of why we want to convert the lanes and the benefit and getting more throughput capacity, more people moving through the corridor rather than widening the road or just keeping as auto-oriented corridor. I get the other thing to add to that capacity and the need question for providing for the transit is that we're not planning for a corridor that we're familiar with from the 70s or the 80s. We're planning for a corridor 20 years down the road. Mississauga, as I mentioned earlier, and all the municipalities through the whole corridor, they're growing by leaps and bounds. There's a significant amount of new population and new employment through the whole corridor. And we've got to accommodate these new people that are going to be in the vicinity of Dundas. And so this will help, move those people in the area. And then the other part of the question was about the traffic studies. And certainly, again, in Dundas Connects, they did a rigorous traffic exercise of comparing the with and without scenario. We are also in our studies doing a traffic modeling and simulation exercise. So we'll be through that exercise showing the impacts of the bus movements on autos and general traffic movements at intersections and along the corridor.
Okay, thank you for that. And I realize I am asking you for additional information on things that you've asked, but people are coming in with specific questions. We're pretty close. Well, we've actually run a couple minutes over our time, but so many questions came in during your presentation. That says it's a good presentation. People were listening and you provided them with new info. There's a question about service options. So the BRT, the line is there, the right-of-way is there. Will other services be able to use it? Will GO buses be running down it? Will the local transit be able to use it? Will we see it, once it's built, being accessible to other transit?
That's a great question as well. there's two types of bus services that we should keep in mind, and one will be the express type transit service that you would want in the BRT guideway. So that's kind of like Dundas Express, I think it's one. And you want those buses in the guideway. But what we need to still do through this transit service routing strategy study that we're working on now is figure out what operator of the service will there be? Will it be a GO service, or will it be a variety of municipal transit service providers that are in the area? And so if that's the case, yes, definitely Oakville Transit or My Way could be in the guideway, in the BRT lanes. The second part to that, though, is that there's a different kind of local service. Right? If you remember, I had said that bus stops are typically for a BRT 500 to 1,000 meters apart, but there's also a local bus service overlay so that you have more frequent bus stops that are only in the order of 250 to say 400 meters, what you see today. And that local bus overlay would be in just general traffic and not in the BRT lanes. So you actually have two types of transit service.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I'm going to ask you to bear with me and let me get two more questions in. The first one is Cooksville construction. Will construction for Cooksville, for the Cooksville section of the BRT be scheduled to coincide with the LRT construction work? Or as this questioner says, please don't dig up the intersection twice. Is there an opportunity for coordination?
I think they're talking about the HU LRT project that's currently in construction. So unfortunately, I don't think that's a possibility just based on the timing that we're still a few years away from the concept of construction. And right now here in Ontario is currently shovels in the ground. So although I do understand the sentiment about coordinating construction, unfortunately, I don't think it's a possibility in this area. Although I would like to point out that typically as part of these projects, what we do is work with the municipalities to identify any parallel works that have to happen. So if they're replacing sewer pipes or putting in underground hydro or things like that, we try to coordinate those kinds of projects with the infrastructure as it goes into the ground. So that's the high point of it. Unfortunately, with here in Ontario, I think it's out of the gate.
Okay, well, honest information is good information, and thank you for that. Last question. So construction is going to happen, and some of the homes that are there, some of the properties have been there for a while, and one questioner is talking about the foundation of the houses in the Credit Woodland area next to Dundas. Some of them may be poor, and the houses shake and crack when a bus or heavy trucks pass. Will it become worse if you move closer to the houses? This person is concerned about the impact on existing properties. Can you address that issue of vibration from both construction and the bus traffic on the BRT, please?
I can take this one, Joseph. So the project team is currently looking at two different design alternatives in this area. And it's important to note that both of these design alternatives stay within the existing road allowance. So there isn't an extreme widening being proposed in this location that would bring traffic closer to the houses. Again, for both of these design alternatives that are being looked at, the vast majority of buses would actually be in the median BRT lane in the center of the road corridor. So this would keep the vast majority of the buses actually at a greater distance from the houses, which would decrease the magnitude and frequency of vibration being experienced at those properties. Another thing to note with vibration is if you're experiencing vibration because a bus or a heavy truck is passing by, it's often because it's hitting a pothole. And so the repaving that would be completed as part of this project would ensure a smoother surface, so that would reduce vibrations from that perspective as well. And just finally, there will be a noise and vibration report prepared for this project that will go into detail on the noise and vibration assessments completed for both the construction and the operation phases.
And will that report be made public and the public have a chance to look at it at some time?
Yeah, it'll be included in the environmental project report, or EPR. That's made publicly available for public review and comment.
And if I was looking forward, when should I start to look for that? What timeline?
Kevin, do you mind jumping in?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for that. For Mississauga East, the public process and that EPR would be available starting in the late fall, so late, like I would say December, so late fall of this year.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to everybody who has participated tonight. Lots of questions came in. We ultimately weren't able to answer all the questions during the live meeting, but Metrolinx staff will be going through the questions and will make an effort to get the information and to put it on the site. Also, if you come to the site at a later stage, you'll be able to see a video replay of tonight's session if there was anything there that you want to pay attention to, or that you want to get more information on. As Kevin said during his presentation, this is not the end. This is part of an ongoing process, and you'll see future meetings, future input opportunities that will be here if you just bookmark this page and come back to it. And in the meantime, there is on the right-hand side of the page where you are watching the video, a feedback form that will be open until the end of the day tomorrow that gives you a space to offer your views on many of the issues that Kevin addressed tonight. There's also an interactive map that you can click on, and you can go to the pinch points or the different stops, and you can provide your input on those things right there so that it'll be relevant. And finally, there's a contact us link so that if you, in fact, you want to get in touch, as Greg was saying earlier, with the project team to discuss something particular, you can contact the team directly. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for caring. This is important stuff. Thank you for the team to come out and do the briefing. By all means, stay safe, and we'll see you at the next one. Good night.